For the past several days, I've been carefully tracing the threads of a story that feels almost impossible to believe. At the center of it is Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old grandmother who vanished from her Tucson home on a quiet January night in 2026. To her family and community, she was steady, faithful, and dependable, the kind of woman who kept everyone grounded. When she disappeared, the initial fear was simple and terrifying. Something terrible must have happened. There were small signs of distress inside the home, but no clear evidence of forced entry or robbery. The mystery quickly captured attention far beyond Arizona. How does someone so rooted in her routine simply vanish? At first glance, it seemed like a tragic, isolated event. But within days, a discovery would transform this from a missing person case into a deeply personal unraveling of identity, love, and long-held secrets. The image of strength. She carefully built Nancy's story as her children knew it was one of resilience. After her husband Charles died unexpectedly in 1989, she raised 3 teenagers on her own in the Catalina foothills. Friends often described her as composed and unwavering, never indulging in self-pity despite the weight she carried. Her modest ranch-style home became a sanctuary of structure and warmth. She worked as a bookkeeper, volunteered at church, and remained deeply present in her children's lives. Savannah, her well-known daughter, frequently spoke about her mother's grace under pressure, crediting her with shaping her own work ethic and calm demeanor. To the outside world, Nancy symbolized quiet endurance. She was the rock, the example, the widow who honored her husband's memory by pouring herself entirely into her family. But strength, when worn for decades, can become something more complicated. A shield that hides parts of the self no one expects to see. The envelope that shifted the narrative. 5 days after Nancy vanished, an unmarked envelope arrived at Savannah's home in New York. Inside was a faded photograph taken in 1992. It showed Nancy standing arm in arm with an unfamiliar man outside a small cafe in Santa Fe, New Mexico. On the back, written in unfamiliar handwriting, were the words, "She deserved more than secrets. Ask about Elena." That single sentence changed everything. During an emotional video call, Savannah held up the photo to her siblings. Annie's voice reportedly trembled as she asked who the man could be. Cam simply stared, stunned. The date on the photograph was 3 years after their father's death. None of them had ever heard the name Elena. The envelope didn't provide answers. It raised new, deeper questions. If their mother had been living another story all these years, why had she hidden it? And how could they have missed it entirely? A meeting in Santa Fe. That changed her path. Investigators soon traced the photograph back to Santa Fe, where Nancy had traveled in 1991 for a church retreat. It was there she met Victor Ramirez, an artist and gallery owner who had built a quiet life in New Mexico after emigrating years earlier. Both had experienced profound loss. Victor had lost his wife in an accident. Nancy was still navigating widowhood. According to Victor, their connection was immediate but gentle. 2 grieving people finding comfort in conversation. What began as friendship gradually deepened into companionship. Santa Fe offered Nancy something Tucson could not: space to breathe beyond responsibility. The art community, the desert light, and the slower pace allowed her to explore interests she had long set aside. She returned home changed, but she did not share why. Instead, She tucked that part of herself away, believing it was easier than disrupting the life her children depended on. Elena. The woman few people knew. In Santa Fe, Nancy was not Nancy. She was Elena, a nickname Victor gave her after a literary character they both admired. Under that name, she became quietly involved in his gallery, helping with bookkeeping and occasionally displaying small paintings of her own. Friends in Santa Fe knew Elena as thoughtful, soft-spoken, and unexpectedly witty. She wore different clothes, styled her hair differently, and rarely mentioned Tucson. Meanwhile, back home, Nancy maintained her routine as devoted mother and grandmother. She described her trips as church visits or time with friends. To her children, they were harmless retreats. To Nancy, they were windows into another version of herself, creative, expressive, unburdened by expectations. She never intended to abandon her family. Instead, she attempted to preserve both worlds. But over time, maintaining two identities required increasing emotional energy, and the balance became harder to sustain. 30 years of careful compartmentalizing. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, Nancy carefully divided her life. Small financial contributions supported Victor's gallery, and she maintained handwritten correspondence to avoid leaving obvious trails. Her children were building their own futures, and she convinced herself that revealing her relationship would only cause confusion or hurt. She feared they might feel she had moved on too quickly after their father's death. Victor, by his account, encouraged openness, but Nancy resisted. She believed her children saw her as the steadfast widow, and she did not want to disrupt that image. In Santa Fe, she organized art events and embraced lively discussions. In Tucson, she baked for birthdays and offered advice over the phone. It was not extravagance she sought. It was space for self-expression. Yet the longer the separation continued, the heavier the secret became. Anxiety, aging, and growing fear. As Nancy aged, the strain of secrecy intensified. Health issues emerged, and travel became more physically demanding. Victor later shared that she occasionally spoke about feeling torn, deeply loyal to her family but unwilling to erase the part of herself that felt alive in Santa Fe. During the pandemic, travel restrictions forced her to remain in Tucson for extended periods, heightening feelings of isolation. She reportedly worried that increased public attention on her daughter's career might expose her hidden life. On her final visit to Santa Fe in January 2026, Victor noticed she seemed distracted. She mentioned feeling watched and unsettled, though it is unclear whether those fears were rooted in reality or stress. When she returned to Tucson, no one knew it would be the last time they would see her. 2 weeks later, she was gone. A family confronts a different reality. When authorities informed the Guthrie siblings about Nancy's long relationship with Victor, emotions were layered and raw. Shock, sadness, and confusion blended together. Savannah reportedly struggled most with reconciling the public narrative she had shared for years with this newly revealed chapter. Annie questioned why their mother felt she had to hide happiness. Cam expressed frustration at being kept in the dark. Yet, beneath those reactions was a quieter understanding. Nancy had spent her life protecting her children from instability. Perhaps she believed silence was another form of protection. Public speculation quickly followed, but for the family this was not gossip. It was grief complicated by discovery. They were not only searching for their missing mother, They were also trying to understand a fuller version of the woman they thought they knew completely. The investigation and lingering questions law enforcement continues to examine whether Nancy's secret relationship played any role in her disappearance. At this stage, there is no confirmed motive. Authorities are reviewing financial records, retracing her recent movements, and following up on tips. Victor has cooperated fully, expressing heartbreak and regret that she felt unable to live openly. Investigators are cautious about drawing conclusions. While the double life adds complexity, it does not automatically explain what happened. It may be connected, or it may simply be a deeply personal chapter uncovered during the search. For now, uncertainty remains. The absence of clear answers has left space for speculation, but officials emphasize patience and careful review of evidence rather than assumptions driven by emotion or rumor, remembering Nancy beyond the secret. As this story continues to unfold, one thing feels undeniable. Nancy Guthrie was more layered than anyone realized. She was a widow who carried grief quietly, a mother devoted to her children, and a woman who longed for creative expression and companionship. Her decision to live partially as Elena does not erase her love for her family. It reveals her humanity. People are rarely defined by a single role, even when that role is performed beautifully for decades. Whether Nancy is found and the mystery resolved, her story already challenges the idea that strength means self-denial. Sometimes, strength is surviving loss. Sometimes it is protecting others. And sometimes it is carving out a hidden corner of joy in a life shaped by duty. For her family, the journey ahead is not only about finding answers, but about embracing the full, complicated truth of who she was.